The Nikon Series E 50mm f1.8 Pancake lens is quite the humdinger. It is the exact same lens as the regular 50mm f1.8, 6 elements in 5 groups of glass, the same diameter, just a little bit shorter. In fact, from the side, from the front of the camera to the front of the lens, it is 24 millimeters on the Pancake lens, and on the regular lens, from the front of the camera to the front of the lens, it is 27.5 millimeters. For another comparison, you can just picture in your mind's eye the camera mount that goes into the camera on the Pancake lens from the back of that to the front of the lens is as long as is the regular lens, not counting the regular lens's camera mount. So with that slight reduction in size, or in length, I guess, in this case, you get less weight, which after a long day shooting does make a difference, the heavier lens as opposed to a lighter one. Also, it being lighter, just to say one positive about it, that's what I could figure has to explain why it's so much easier to focus this focus ring as opposed to the slightly heavier lens focus ring that you have on the regular 50-1.8. I could be wrong, but the Pancake 1.8, as I like to call it, does seem to be a snappier focus ring. Now let's get away from the 1.8 versus the 1.8 and slow things down to the 50mm f2, just to look at the two sort of cousins, as it were, against each other. And this is from 1965, an exquisite lens, beautiful color, beautiful contrast. In fact, the color and contrast on this lens are gorgeous in its own right. There's sort of a vintage look, I would say, on this lens. Maybe I'll make a video on this one day. But from the side, the 1965 50mm f2 versus the 50-1.8 Pancake, as I like to call it, the 1.8 Pancake is actually a little bit thinner than this retro, slower 50mm f2 lens. So finally, let's speed things up. And on a high note, the 50mm f1.4, this gargantuan thing with such a large front element compared to the 1.8, it is a bigger apparatus in its entirety. And so you can already predict from the side view, it's going to be quite a bit bigger than the Pancake lens. Now, what is this Pancake lens good for? Well, I already mentioned it has wonderful contrast and color. I did not mention it has beautiful sharpness. I think the details are wonderful on it. And the focusing ring is super snappy. One thing, though, it is too good at, it is quite ineluctable in the face of the sun. That is, lens flares galore on this thing. So get yourself the HR-4 lens hood or generic equivalent to save yourself the trouble if you do not find any sort of artistic merit in lens flare. One thing also I might add that vintage lenses have, by and large, on new lenses is that bright work. Look at that chrome on the side. Kind of a piddly thing to be excited about, but looks aren't everything, but maybe there's something they factor in there, right? Now that we've seen this lens, let's take a look at the pictures and videos it can take. Hello, this is Ryan Ellis, and this is a lens review of the 50mm f1.8 Pancake lens, as it's lovingly referred to. Not officially by Nikon Corporation, but you know, once the name was given to it, it sort of stuck. My subject is my friend, Mr. Roy R. Rowlands, a international man of mystery. Check out his life story videos, link in the description. Okay, so first, the positive about this lens, look at that color. That red of his bandana just shines. Oh, well, speaking of shine, because it's a Pancake lens, because it doesn't come out very far from the front of the camera body, you're going to get this lens flare a lot more, I've found, than using the regular 50mm lens out in the sun, which we'll have actually indoor session at the very end of this video to compare. This is actually one of my favorite shots, so which, goes to show that lens flare is not always bad. Sometimes it can be a good thing artistically. So here we are. I'm on a bike, he's on a bike, and I'm staying on focus with the shot, manual focus. And that's one thing another positive I'll mention that I couldn't stop raving about is the focus ring on this is extremely easy to use. Um, Roy, Roy and I were kind of going back and forth trying to figure out, like, from an engineering perspective, like why is this as opposed to another 50 millimeter lens easier? And actually, to interrupt that thought, we ran into this married couple, or well, yeah, they would be a married couple. I mean, they're in their wedding wedding apparel, and I just kind of thought it was kind of neat that I'd never seen these people before. They'd never seen me, and then we just turn the corner, and our stories each continue apart. But maybe one day they can see this video and see, oh, those people we ran into, that's what happened after we went our separate ways. The almost seemingly irreducibly complex world being funneled down into reducibly complex means. And in fact, over here, I put the little note, the diameter is the same, is the point, the center of a spoke turns faster than the outside of a spoke. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why is this lens so good at focusing compared to my other 50 millimeter lens? It's the same diameter. I have the diameter listed later in the video of the other lens, but needless to say, this lens is small. It's maybe the lightest Nikon ever made, according to Ken Rockwell's website review of the lens. It's super easy to focus, great color. Did I mention the contrast? Look at that, the darks and the lights. And coming up soon, when we traverse the DeQuinder cut right here, there's going to be a close-up on Roy's face, because I was really trying to show the close focus, and you could see the detail that this lens is capable of capturing for your camera, whatever camera you're using it with. I'm sure you can adapt it endlessly. That's one of the cool things about these vintage lenses. Now, this is Nikon Series E, so supposedly it's kind of like the second tier. Oh, right here, I love this close-up of Roy's face. You can see all, like, every kind of pore. And it's funny, my memory card went out, so you're getting two for the price of one, really kind of almost three. This is another Week in Detroit, number 134. Again, actually not again. Roy was supposed to be my subject. We kind of had, crossed some wires communication-wise. I'm sorry, Roy. I showed up right as he was leaving. We're like, oh, didn't work out. It happens, we meet just about every week, once or twice a week, and just shoot the breeze, just hang out in Detroit. Now, here again is another artistic look, more of a right brain compliment as opposed to a left brain complaint. I think of one of the smartest men, R. Buckminster Fuller, sunlight unwinding from the log. Just look up those words and read the story behind it. But the lens flare, again, can be an artistic boon as opposed to a bane. Now, speaking of turning boon from bane, wheel from woe, because I'm no longer, I was supposed to be biking with my friend Roy today. Instead, now I'm on foot because, change of plans. So stillness as surrender. So I decided, instead of being a moving object, trying to take pictures of a moving object in video with this lens, why not just be a still object looking at still objects? So I decided to take a bunch of time lapses, and well, as it goes, one of the best things about time lapses is movement. So I guess there is actually movement is sort of key to a time lapse, is it not? Movement and light, right? I'm sure there's more things, but being still put me in a position, like there's this guy skateboarding. So I just took some video, and then he let me take his portrait. But you'll see here the rich blues when the portraits flash in front of the screen, and the great color reproduction. The natural skin tones right here. I really love this as a portrait lens. I mean, after all, 15 millimeters is thereabouts of what the human eye sees. There's Canada, the Canadian flag, the city of Windsor. These are 3 officers in the Marine Corps, females. I'm like, you guys could probably take me down if you wanted. And again, stillness as surrender. So this is the Joe Louis Arena, something that's not going to be here forever. It's going to be torn down next year. And I used to teach digital photography, and a great hero of photography in Detroit. In fact, they call him the Dean of Detroit Photography, Bill Rauhauser. I'll mention him one more time later on. One of the things he always taught as a photographer and as a teacher, instructor, was a great way to become a better photographer is just be a student of art and history and the sciences, just just be a general learner. So that when you're looking at something, you can see why is it important or what here is important, so I can focus on that. And that I kind of take with me every single time I go out and take pictures. And certainly having a better tool in your toolkit, an easier to use tool, helps that process be a lot more seamless. This is again the Joe Louis Arena, kind of circled around it. And now here's some amazing close focus footage with this lens. But speaking of tools, I was just mentioning this lens is super easy just to, I'm going between the close and the farthest focus, but you see how easy it is to kind of flick that focus very smoothly too. So again, I really recommend this lens. Okay, so I'm going to pause right here. There's a guy named Ivan Kalakovic.com. He is a photographer. I met him while taking this time lapse. We kind of talked and walked around. Check out his work because support art. But yeah, this is a great, lens. It sees at the same focal length that the human eye sees. So basically, the reason why I mention that is if you see a cool composition somewhere in your field of view, you don't have to kind of zoom in or zoom out with it in your mind's eye. It's, when you put the camera up to your head, it's just as you see. But, okay, back to Bill Rauhauser. I said I was coming back to him, the Dean of Detroit Photography. And I said that he said, you need to be a student so you can be a better photographer. And so I saw this, something, I always say to myself, if I can make the remark, I don't see that every day or something's wrong here. I usually try to take a picture. And here, this side up was greatly being confused. And right next to it, someone did it the right way in the same store, just kind of two different windows of the same building. And I wonder, I'm like, what would Bill Rauhauser, like, what would a student of the arts, of the sciences, like, how could you kind of mix disciplines together to create something greater? Speaking of something greater, Kenny Scharf, a friend of Basquiat, a friend of Warhol, showing at my favorite art gallery in all of Detroit, David Klein Gallery. So sadly, the last day of that showing is actually this coming Saturday, so it's probably too late to see it, but check out his work and check out David Klein Gallery nonetheless. Wonderful, wonderful places. So here we're winding down with the Pancake lens footage, and we're going to go to the regular Nikon lens just in a couple seconds, right about here. And this is the same lens that I just showed you, just bigger. It's not the Pancake. And I would argue it's just as good. Now, this lens does have a better close focus, 1.5 feet, as opposed to my Pancake lens is 2 feet. But there are Pancake lenses by Nikon that are 1.5 feet. So there is a simpatico comparison to be made out there. And I would say just for the convenience, and it's actually less imposing if you walk up to someone and say, "Hey, can I take your picture?" And you just have a little Pancake lens as opposed to a slightly bigger lens. I mean, it might just be such a negligible difference, but I think it's one that's noticeable enough from my experience to make mention of here. Yeah. So speaking of different disciplines. I do like to sew my own camera straps. I like to customize them. Just, I like to have things, just so, no pun intended. And Roy was giving me some tips on how to maybe make a pattern of a camera strap. So I'm excited about that. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you made your decision if you're on the fence, if you want to buy a Pancake lens or stick just with a regular 50mm. I do have a Tumblr page. It's ryanellisphoto.tumblr.com. Right here is a little sample, just kind of scrolling around and going through photos. Not enough people get to see it, so I'm just mentioning it here. Thank you very much for watching. Support me, patreon.com/cdetroit like I do. Have a nice day. Au revoir.